Welcome to my journey. My name is Zala and I'm an art restorer who loves baking. I challenged myself to bake 400 pastry recipes out of my 12th edition of Slovene Cookbook from 1954.
Okay, hello everyone. So I have decided to make cherry flatbread the 5th today. Let me show you the recipe. Our cherry season is finally coming to an end, and this is the last batch of cherries for this year, I think. I have some frozen, but I wanted to make one final recipe using fresh ones. Now that I have them, I have chosen this recipe because it looks very interesting, and let's look through it together to see what it wants from us. Okay, it says you should mix butter, egg yolks, and sugar together, and that immediately reminds me of the other flatbread that I already made a video about, and in that recipe it says very similarly egg yolks and butter together. And since it states here that it should be smooth, I think I'm gonna go with my intuition and fluff up the butter and the sugar first and add egg yolks in separately, because the last time I was making it was not smooth. You can go check it out yourself. So yeah, okay. Then it says that we should take breadcrumbs and soak with 3 tablespoons of rum. It's interesting because she uses breadcrumbs instead of flour. Then it says lemon peel, snow from 5 egg whites. Snow is the term that we use in our country. That means egg whites beaten until stiff peaks begin to form, but that's a mouthful, so we just say egg white snow. And okay, into the cake tin. That's interesting. Usually when you're making flatbreads, it's, you know, in either a rectangular tin or just a random dish that you have, but this one specifically calls for a cake tin, so I think I'm gonna use the 20 centimeter one since it has not failed me yet regarding the quantities stated here. Then it says, okay, half of the batter inside of the cake tin, then cover with a wafer. Okay, wait. I'm sure I saw it somewhere. Here in this book, she has a recipe for cake wafers, which are batter, then in between there are almonds, sugar and vanilla, and then batter again, and it's made in clamps. Here it's a whole section on pastries with clamps, like waffles. So I'm really not sure if she expects me to bake those in order to make this recipe, or are like normal wafers like this okay. So since I have these ones that need to be used, I'm just gonna, you know, take my chances with these and see how they turn out. Okay, and you should put a random amount of sugar on and a random amount of cherries. So I guess you will go by taste and hope that it doesn't turn out extremely soggy or anything like that. Then you should cover it with the other half of the dough and bake in an oven. Of course you should bake in an oven. Which degrees, how was the time? I'm guessing golden brown as usual. Afterwards, sprinkle it with sugar. Oh, okay, here I might actually go with powdered sugar, because when I was making the previous flatbread, me and my partner discussed during the tasting bit if I made the right decision while using the normal caster sugar, and it did add a crunch, but we both wondered how it would be if I would maybe use powdered sugar, because she does not state like either or. So I don't know, depending on how this one looks when it's baked, I might go for powdered sugar with this one, just to, you know, just to see what happens. And it's okay. That's it for the recipe. The only thing that it says that it's good to eat cold as well. Okay, so let's just get baking, right?
Okay, so I started by preparing all of the layers that I will need for this cake, which is wafers separately from cherries, separately from batter. I started off by cutting the wafer in a circular shape so that it would fit my 20 centimeter cake tin. She probably meant using spring form here, but I much prefer these ones since I find it way easier to remove the baked pastry afterwards. After that, I prepared my cherries, I depeated them, and luckily I did not need as many as for the pie, where I used 1.5 kilos. Here I just went completely by feeling since she does not state the exact amount of cherries, so I prepared a little bit more than I thought I was gonna need. And after all of that was prepared, I could finally get on with the batter. And as I mentioned previously, I first took the butter and sugar and creamed them with a paddle attachment to get that nice and fluffy texture, and only after that was done, I added in the egg yolks, because that way they would be incorporated much more smoothly into the mixture, avoiding the lumpiness that happened when I was making the flatbread previously. After that, I took my breadcrumbs. In this recipe, they're a substitute for flour, which actually makes sense because in these older recipes, oftentimes breadcrumbs would be easier to use than flour because flour was not as widely available, and when you had bread at your house, it would be important to use every last bit of it so that it would not go to waste. So when you had bread, if it went stale, you would just grate it up and use those breadcrumbs for baking, which actually turns out to be super cool because they absorb moisture way better than flour. So when you soak them with juice or with alcohol, rum in our case, they actually act like little sponges and absorb that moisture and preserve its character way better than flour would. They plump up and also give the batter a nice texture because of that. And yeah, that reminded me actually that my grandma used to tell me that when they were growing up, there was a lot of them in the family. She had like 13 siblings, and they were growing up in a farmhouse household. And her mother used to bake bread one day of the week, and she would bake for the whole week for the whole family. So if they ran out of bread halfway through, that was it. She only made it on one day, and that also meant that on the 7th day, when it was old, they have to do something with it, either dry it up or eat it a little bit iffy, if you know what I mean. So it actually makes sense that it was so important today to them because they did not take it for granted. After I mixed the breadcrumbs into the batter, mixed the egg whites inside, it was time to assemble our flatbread. It says first the first half of the batter and then the wafer, And as I was doing this step, it actually came to me why the wafer was in between, because as I read the recipe, I was really confused about that. I did not know what the heck its purpose is. But as I was putting it in, I noticed how actually runny, how soft the batter is, and the cherries that I put on would sink if I would not put this wafer in between. So it geniusly prevents the cherries from sinking to the bottom of the cake, and if we're lucky, it's gonna preserve them in between to make it visually way more pleasing than if they would just sink on the bottom. But I was still very curious how the texture of the wafer would turn out to be, because I was wondering if it would bother the final consistency of the flatbread itself. I baked at 175 degrees Celsius for half an hour, or until I saw that it's golden brown, and as I stuck a knife in it, it came out clean. After that, I indeed decided to use powdered sugar, just based on what felt right to me in that moment. And after that, the only thing left to do was to cut it up and look how it looks on the inside. And I have to say that I love how visually pleasing it is. So I was really excited to try it out.
Focaccia flatbread.
Okay. Will I be able to do it?
Oh. Shall see.
Should we stop for a bit and wait? Okay, focaccia.
Cheers.
Cheers. Wow, now this one's definitely bready. The funny thing is that there is no flour in this thing, only breadcrumbs.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think that's why it's called the flatbread.
Oh.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And in between is a wafer.
Oh, really?
And you couldn't tell, you wouldn't be able to tell because it's so moistened up.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's really like interconnected.
Doesn't the alcohol content bother you?
There's alcohol in this?
Yeah, can't you feel it? Like this time I'm feeling it.
No. What's in it?
The rum.
Is it distilled?
The breadcrumbs are soaked in rum.
Oh, no, I can't feel a thing.
And you finally got your powdered sugar.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that normal sugar would add anything in this case. The one from the previous video was, I think it was better off having normal sugar, while this one is better off having this one.
Sugar,
So, like, which one of these flatbreads so far do you prefer?
I think it's this one.
Really?
Yeah, this one is, I don't know. The taste is basically the same, but it's nicer. It's a nicer feeling to eat.
Okay, it's true. The texture is better with this one. With the taste, I actually preferred the other one, because is it only me or was it a little bit juicier? With this recipe, she told me to use exactly 3 tablespoons of rum to soak the breadcrumbs, and in that one I had free reign on how much milk I pour over the bread. So it might be the case that I just, because I like it juicier, that I put more milk than she maybe assumed that I will.
Maybe. I would rate this about 8.
Really? To me, I think it would be 7, because it would have to be more juicy, not more alcoholic. So I wouldn't put 4 tablespoons instead of 3 of rum. No, but something, those breadcrumbs would need to be better soaked with something else in order for me to like it more. But it's great. So 7 out of 10 for me, and for you 8 out of 10.
I agree with that.
Okay, thank you for trying this with us and surviving through another flatbread.